Consciousness and unconsciousness in self-hate. Self-hate often goes on consciously with the complete awareness of its victim. Unfortunately, unless it is a concomitant of severe and painful depression, it's seldom taken seriously. A severe depression cannot escape the attention of the victim and those close to him. It is manifested by self-castigation, self-derision, self-mutilation, starvation, even paralysis, and actual inability to function. But short of painful depression, people will actively depreciate, demean, and put themselves down generally with almost complete ease and with little or no awareness of the destructive aspects and results involved. The same people may speak of feeling demoralized, depleted, weak, helpless, hopeless, frightened, vulnerable, fragile, incapable, or self-doubting, without making any connection at all between these symptoms and their own attacks upon themselves. I had a patient, Jack, who simply never lost an opportunity to put himself down and also to blame himself for any mishap that occurred within miles of him. "I just can't do anything right. I guess I'm just stupid. If I had known better, my father wouldn't have made the investment and would have saved all that money. I figured he must be right, and as it turned out, I was the one who was right all along. I know that he's much smarter than I am. I just can't understand it. You tell me that I'm right, and I just can't believe it. Are you telling me this just to make me feel good?" Jack was frequently tired, indecisive, unhappy, afraid of new situations, and in most situations felt, damned if I do and damned if I don't. He was conscious of his self-derision, but made no connection between his symptoms and obvious expressions of self-hate. Indeed, the very denial and lack of awareness of the connection is itself a form of self-hate, since ignorance clouds the issue and prevents it from constructive change. It had to be pointed out to Jack again and again that he repeatedly expressed more contempt for himself and rejection of himself than anyone else inflicted on him. Indeed, much of his fear in new situations were projections of his own self-hate. It took much time before Jack realized that anticipated rejection from others had no realistic basis other than coming from feelings which had their beginnings in his own mind. But most self-hate goes on unconsciously, that is, totally out of conscious awareness. It does not take the form of obvious verbalized self-derision and contempt. Its effects are more insidious, more pervasive, and much more difficult to pinpoint and to fight against. This is a kind of emotional malignancy, a malignancy of the soul, in which we often feel badly and can't understand why. In attempting to conform to cultural and to environmental pressures, and to meet only values and standards which we have come to deem as acceptable, our ability to store away information about ourselves in a part of our unconsciousness that is not readily available becomes exaggerated. In other words, our ability to repress becomes too good. We have the ability to remember and to forget. To clear the road for the here and now business of everyday living, we forget for the moment material which is not necessary for immediate use. We can recall the material whenever we need it, but there is much about ourselves, particularly all kinds of feelings, that we don't want to be able to recall or know about at all. This is especially true of perfectly human feelings and characteristics which we have unfortunately come to view as inhuman or less than ideal. These may include anger, especially at people we love, selfishness, cowardice, very strong feelings, or, especially in men, softer feelings. Thus, we develop our forgetting ability to a highly exaggerated degree. We come to use it constantly and with extreme efficiency, so that much knowledge about ourselves and many feelings that we have are automatically pushed down and away, repression, without our knowing that we are doing this, without choice. Another way of saying the same thing is that we repress a great deal, and in so doing are constantly engaging in the process of adding to the unconscious part of ourselves. This process of anesthetizing, splitting, hiding ourselves from ourselves, and deadening ourselves invariably has destructive repercussions. The feelings we push out of ready awareness cannot be selected at will, as we may think. When we repress one feeling, we usually repress many others as well, and in so doing, lose use of much that is of value in ourselves. Also, feelings and information that are repressed don't just go away and die. On the contrary, they remain active forces in our minds and continue to produce all kinds of difficulties because once cut off from the mainstream of consciousness, they go on autonomously, often in a bizarre manner and with highly exaggerated force. Thus, repressed anger may turn to severe depression and to extremely morbid thoughts and fantasies. Repressed anger also often functions as a block to other feelings, so that a person who is angry and doesn't know it very often cannot feel love or feel or express warmth. In any case, since exaggerated repression is a form of self-rejection, the process itself must be viewed as self-hating. The storehouse of potential aliveness we keep for our own use is evidence of self-hate. That many of us spend our lives choicelessly responding to inner dictates we know nothing about is further evidence of self-hate. Unlike conscious self-hate, unconscious self-hate is global and affects the total personality, lifestyle, and all aspects of relating. Self-hate provides much of the fuel necessary to the neurotic process and to the journey away from our actual selves. In this regard, we must view psychoanalytic therapy as compassionate, because its goal is to make conscious that which is unconscious. However, this process too must be conducted with utmost compassion if it is to succeed on a meaningful and sustained level. In other than a compassionate atmosphere and process, careless and uncaring revelation of hitherto buried aspects of ourselves often brings on massive self-hating onslaughts and further repression. The solemn, deep promise to be gentle with ourselves must be invoked again and again, before and during any process of self-revelation. This is so because our culture dictates extreme harshness and punitive measures when violation of any of its dictates and standards of performance are revealed. I am reminded of Bill, who told me how he locked himself in the bathroom to avoid his mother's wrath over some minor infraction. She told him to come out and to confess, promising that the truth would save him punishment. When he did, she commended him for obeying her, and yet beat him and washed his mouth with soap for committing the crime itself. Most of us fear punishment from ourselves if we reveal certain truths. Thus, we keep the unconscious variety of self-hate going and resist revelation both in and out of treatment unless we promise ourselves compassion and keep the promise, absolutely refusing to engage in self-recrimination no matter what we encounter in ourselves. This can only be done with insight into both our self-hating and our compassionate process.